Welcome, everybody. Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful long weekend, as unusual as it might have been. I hope that you all took the chance to reconnect with friends and family. And if you were on our webinar on Thursday, you know that Colonel Gasparotto talked about some 4 pillars about wellness in this time. So today our guest is going to be Dan Miller. Dan is an internationally renowned nutrition and fitness expert. He has developed health and wellness programs for all walks of life. He has presented these strategies to thousands of executives worldwide and helped them live longer and healthier lives. Dan is also one of Visage International's top speakers, and he was Speaker of the Year in 2018. He's also a certified nutrition coach and an International Board of Nutrition and Fitness member. So Dan is uniquely positioned to give us some tips, some guidelines, some recommendations about how we stay healthy in this challenging time of isolation. If you have questions for Dan, I would encourage you to type them into the question box. Dan's going to have a good talk with you if your questions pop up. Dan, is it all right if I interrupt you?
Yeah, totally fine. I would love that.
Perfect. So that way we can have a conversation based on what people are writing in about. So without further ado, I should say Kate was going to join us, but unfortunately she had something come up at the last minute. So Kate LaBosse won't be online with us, but we still have Dan. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
I'm like the consolation prize. Well, I'm still here. Hey, so you guys, this is a really, really weird time for us, but when we look at where we've been headed and where we're headed with overall health, with societal health in modern cities, it's actually not that weird for me to see what's going on right now because we've been headed down this path for a long, long time. Since, and I don't like to look at what can we blame for what's going on or what's happening, but since the invention of the cell phone, we've been further and further distancing ourselves from other people anyway as a natural progression in wherever our society is headed. And there's some dangers in that, and there's some dangers in what's going on right now. And I kind of want to talk to you about what you can do so that you don't fall into one of those groups that is at super high risk of not only this virus that's going around, but any virus or any sickness or any of the diseases that are killing modern people. So let's begin this discussion with going over what actually is killing modern people, and we might get a hint for what might be going on here. Because when we look at human evolution, when we look at the human mammal, we evolved over the last 2.5 million-ish years. Most of that evolution, and I would bet almost all of it, 99.9% of that evolution occurred outdoors. We were a product of our environment for millions of years. And it was only about 11,000 or so years ago where we started manipulating our environment to meet our needs. But prior to that, for a couple million years, the environment shaped us, and we were a product of that environment. And that's kind of how your DNA has been adapting this entire time, is the DNA looks at the environment and decides which genes to express and which genes not to express. So all of us are built with this hardwired DNA code that came from mom and dad, that came from grandma and grandpa, that you're never going to be able to change. But what we need to realize is that's only attributed to about 7% of how long you're going to live, and about 10% of modern diseases are wholly genetic, and there's nothing you can do about them. They're hardwired. The vast majority of your longevity and the vast majority of the diseases that may or may not afflict you as you age come from what we call gene expression, your genetic code deciding which genes to turn on and which genes to turn off based on the environment that you're in. So you have to remember this. The programming doesn't care what you believe. It doesn't care about what's going on right now other than it's reading the environment. And the environment matters more than anything I could ever talk about. I mean, I can take, and they've done these studies, you take a set of identical twins with identical DNA, and you put one in a very, very high stress, very scary environment, and you put one in a very relaxing, very low stress, environment, and you see radically different things happen with gene expression. And we can assume that's happening with us as well, because that's the basis of modern diseases. So if we look at gene expression and how does our DNA decide what to turn on and what to turn off, we look at how it's reading environment. And it gives us a little bit of some clues about how our DNA sees, if you will. It doesn't have eyes, but it sees. So your DNA is looking at environment primarily through three pathways: thoughts, movement, and food. Those three pathways are the three primary ways your DNA is seeing the environment around you. The thoughts that you think, the words that you hear, the things that you watch on TV. When I talk about a diet with people, they assume I'm talking only about food. And a diet also consists of the things you put into your eyes, the things you put into your ears, and the thoughts that you think. Those are all part of your overall diet as well. And the DNA is responding to that more so than it is through movement, more so than it is through food. The primary way your DNA is reading environment is through thoughts. And that brings us to what's going on in society now. We are a product of the environment currently, and that environment is fear. It's be scared, be afraid, shelter in place, which is an order that they used originally. Shelter in place was used for chemical warfare. So these are very, very scary words for us to hear, and we're scared to go outside, we're scared to see other people. And when we look at how fear negatively affects the immune response, there are hundreds of studies that show that fear and stress negatively affect your immune response, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do when there's a virus going around and we're trying to stay healthy. So one of the things that we'll begin this conversation with is how your thoughts matter and why your thoughts matter and what does that mean for you. And I want to use a couple of examples here. One of the examples I want to use is called the placebo effect. And when we hear placebo effect, a lot of people just think, oh, that's when you get sold a pill that doesn't do anything, but then something happens and it's just placebo. And what I like to look at is the placebo effect is a physiological response that you can measure because you were told it was going to happen. So nothing happens, you were told it's going to, you take a tiny little magic pill that does nothing at all, and you have something happen. And when you look at pill trials and you look at placebo in some pill trials, drugs have to fight to outperform placebo in order to be a prescription-worthy drug, to be able to be approved for humans. They have to outperform placebo, which performs quite well, I might add. In some pill trials, the placebo has been nearly 60% effective. So there are some things out there that have to try to outperform that. And that, to me, is something we need to pay attention to. If let's say, for instance, you go to a physician, they give you a prescription, and they tell you this pill will for sure lower your blood pressure, and you start taking the pill, and lo and behold, your blood pressure goes down, and that pill was nothing. It was just a sugar pill. That, to me, is a magical response that happens because of belief. And without getting too mystical or touchy-feely here, I want you guys to understand the importance of that. That happens because 88% of the human brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what you tell it. So the vast majority of your brain, if you believe something enough and that's your only truth, actually responds physically that way and can create physical responses in the human body. Now, that's a powerful experience. The placebo is great medicine for a lot of people. That's fantastic, but there's also a downside. There's a thing called the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect is the exact opposite of placebo. Sometimes that's called the WebMD effect. And some of you are already giggling a little bit to yourselves going, oh, I know that one. That's where you go to WebMD, you look up your symptoms, and then you get worse. Because you read something, you believe that you have it, and your body changes its physiology to match that belief. And that's important to know that that happens. There's a placebo when you're thinking positive and you're told awesome things will happen, and there's a nocebo when you're told you will have these side effects, or the vast majority of people do, or when you're told to be scared, you should be stressed, you should be hoarding food. That is a problem for our brain. And that happens, those two effects happen because 88% of the human brain has no idea what's real and what you tell it. So the thoughts matter more than anything. And now when you're trying to boost your immune system and you're cowering in fear over something you can't see, and you're told to shelter in place, keep your family safe. What does that even mean? It means stay away from all other people, isolate yourself in your homes, don't leave. Think about this for a second. The worst punishment for any prisoner is isolation. We put them in isolation, in solitary confinement, and that's the worst thing you can do. It's known to drive people crazy. It's known to cause anxiety and severe depression. And what have we just asked? An entire country, not only in Canada, but in the US and all over the world, we've asked citizens all over the world to not leave their home, to be afraid, to hoard supplies, and to wear masks when you go in public and don't talk to people. If that's not causing a negative response, I don't know what would. So I'm not going to say we should change policy, but I'm going to remind you of something. Outside is still open, and outside you can still stay away from other people. Outside is a huge area, and there's some very, very important things that happen when the human animal goes back outside. There's sunlight out there, there's fresh air out there, there's UVB light that actually has been known to be antimicrobial and antibacterial. UVB light is very, very healthy for humans. And so we're forgetting is that our backyards are still open. We can still, if it's not snowing, we can still go out and grill on the grill out on the deck. We can still go for walks. Just stay away from other people. That way you're not violating any of the things that you're supposed to be doing now, but you get back out and get some fresh air and get some sunlight on your skin and get your circadian rhythm reset. So that one of the things that I want you to realize that you have control over, 100% control over for the rest of your life, are the thoughts that you say to yourself, the things that you think, and the diet of visual and auditory things you put into your body. You have complete control over that if you're an adult. So if the TV is causing you stress or causing fear, turn it off. There's a power button on the remote, make it go away. Choose what you're putting in very carefully, especially now, because those fears, those things that are coming up with us being isolated and alone, are radically reducing your immune response. And that is not a healthy thing right now. So we're going to change our thoughts first. The words you say in the mirror matter. The words you say in your head matter. And I know a lot of folks watching this are going through extreme financial duress right now. One thing that we're fortunate of in our countries is that even under extreme financial duress, most of us won't starve to death. Most of us, our life may be radically different on the end of this or during this, but our chances of starving to death are pretty slim in the countries where we live. So we're very, very fortunate for that. There are folks in countries around the world that if they don't get out and look for food every day, they're not going to eat. And days of that can cause severe problems. So malnutrition may be an issue in our countries because of the food that we put in is very nutrient poor, but starvation is extraordinarily rare. So one of the things that we can be fortunate of is at least we have food to eat. We need to start counting our gratitudes. We have family around us. Mom and dad aren't commuting to work anymore. I'm not stuck in a school learning from strangers. I'm at home with mom and dad. If I'm a kid, this is the best time ever. Maybe I don't get to see my friends, but still there's a lot of things like phones and some of the other technology that we can use to stay in contact with those people. I want you guys to start looking at what are the positives that are coming out of this situation right now, because you cannot change what's happening. The only thing you can do is change your response to what's happening. And that chosen response drives DNA expression. And if that chosen response is fear and stress, you will have a very hard time staying healthy. Whereas if that thought response to what's going on right now is, how very fortunate, I can still have conversations with people I know and love. Most of my meetings are still going on. I still have food on the table, and now I get to spend more time with the people I love and want to spend time with. If we start looking at this from how fortunate we are and change that mentality and change that thought pattern to one of gratitude and health, then we can start making changes. So when we come out of this, we're not going to be behind the 8 ball going, how do I catch up? There's a lot of people joking right now about gaining the COVID-15, gaining the 15 pounds of being isolated for a couple of months. Guys, that's not funny. That's actually sad. It's tragic that people are putting their health at greater risk so that when we're allowed to leave our homes and go back to normalcy, we're already immunodeficient because we're bragging about how much alcohol we're drinking, how much weight we're gaining, how much Netflix we're watching. And I'm not going to say I don't do some of those things, but not in excess and not any more than normal, because what I remembered and what I want you to remember is outdoors is still open. And I spend a large part of my day walking in the city, walking out in nature, still avoiding people, but being outside and getting my movement in. So DNA expression is going to start with reading environment through thoughts. Constant stress, constant fear is not what we need to be doing right now. If you want a fantastic book to read on this, because now's a good time to read if you're not commuting to and from work, and you might have an extra hour, hour and a half a day of time, it's a really good time to go and have your own little self-induced university by buying some books. The most powerful book you can read on that, in my estimation, is a book written in the 1980s called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. That is written by a Dr. Shad Helmstetter. So What to Say When You Talk to Yourself is the title of that book. That, for me, if you want to operate in the human body effectively, is recommended reading, and I would consider that mandatory reading if you want to be a better citizen of your community, because the thoughts matter. And if your thoughts aren't aligned with health and abundance and gratitude, everything else is pointless to try to address, because failure is inevitable. Good luck eating healthy when you are constantly under stress, because that's not the foods that we choose when we're constantly stressed are not healthy foods. And I know that because I've seen this in tens of thousands of people. You can watch this in yourself. When you're under huge stress and under fear, you tend to choose sugary foods that you know you probably shouldn't be eating anyway. So start with thoughts. Start with aligning your thoughts of ones of health and gratitude. If you have a mantra that you chant in the mirror, or if you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning while you're getting ready, those of you who are still showering during this shutdown and during this quarantine, if you are looking at yourself in the mirror at all, please start looking at yourself with love and gratitude and power and health. And the mantra would be, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I can't wait for today, rather than today is going to suck, this sucks, I hate myself, this is stupid, and all the other things that we find ourselves saying quite more often that actually harm your physical body. So keep in mind, if 88% of your brain doesn't know, let's clean your thoughts up first. Then we'll go further down that list and look at movement. And movement is essential. And I'll tell you how I know this. I'll tell you how I know movement is essential to life. If you just simply go camping for a week out in nature and just stay in your tent, don't bring food with you, but just stay in your tent and see if an animal brings you food magically. Because the rule for the last couple million years, while humans evolved outside, was if you don't move, you don't eat. That's the way it's always been. Food and movement have been linked together since the dawn of man, and now here we are with Uber Eats or Grubhub or Postmates or pick one of the other apps on your phone where you can have a stranger deliver food to your house that might not even be food. A lot of the food in modern society isn't even food, but we don't have to move. And we are animals of opportunity. And you'll find this with any other animal. If you put free food in front of any animal, its movement goes down to next to nothing. That's how that works. The diseases that happen with that, though, are a huge problem. So when we look at modern diseases and what we're dying from, they're largely diseases of lack of movement and the wrong food choices and horrible thoughts. Right now in Canada and in the US, the #1 and #2 causes of death, and they alternate between, it's like they're battling to take control over one another. Heart disease is #1 in the US, where it's #2 currently in Canada, and cancer is #2 in the US, where it's #1 in Canada, and those kind of alternate back and forth. Cancer's heart disease, cancer's heart disease. The problem with those are, according to our federal government, the CDC in the United States, 90% of heart disease is preventable. We are dying of a preventable disease. Well, what's the majority cause of heart disease? Wrong thoughts, too much stress, no movement, and the wrong foods. That's the vast majority of the causes. Those three things your DNA responds to, thoughts, movement, and food, are the #1 cause of 90% of the top killers in our countries. So if we can clean these up, maybe we don't die of heart disease. Maybe we don't die of some of the cancers that are happening, because again, cancers, the vast majority, I'm not saying all, but the vast majority are not single gene disorders that you are born with. They are multi-gene epigenetic responses to some sort of constant environmental trigger. And the more that trigger gets pulled, the greater our chances of having one of those disruptions in our genetic code that causes cancer. Cancer isn't something that somebody sneezes on you and you catch it. Cancer is a disruption in the body where something goes horribly wrong and the off switch gets turned permanently off and cells keep replicating in the form of tumors. That they're largely due to ridiculous and constant environmental triggers being pulled over decades. And that's what we have to start looking at this as not, well, if it's not killing me today, it's not a problem. This whole body is done over and built over decades, not a day. So if you can clean your thoughts up for a day, if you can start moving, and my recommendation for movement is still and always will be, get at least 10,000 steps a day. Find a way to get 10,000 steps in today so that you have some movement, whether that's doing some workouts at home, whether that's going outside for a walk, or whether that's like I tend to drive to a park that's nearby here. It's a state park, but there's lots of public land around it. And there's no people. There's never anyone there. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's going outside. And I like it like that, but I wish more people would realize outside's still open, and it's really easy when you go for a 3.5-hour walk outside to get 10,000 steps in, because that's almost double that already. So the amount of movement you get is going to dictate a lot of your DNA expression and immune response. And you can see this in athletes, and you can see this in non-athletes who exercise regularly. Their immune response is much, much stronger. And there's all kinds of mechanisms that happen. Yes, go ahead.
A question came in from Tim about where does type 2 diabetes fit in versus cancer and heart disease on that scale? Because again, that's another one of those diseases that we create.
Yeah, it's a largely preventable disease, and they're saying that almost all of type 2 is preventable, even though some people might have genetic predispositions. But type 2 diabetes is typically 4 or 5 down the list. So third in our country, and I think it's pretty close to this in Canada, is what they call unintentional injury or unintentional accidents. And in the US, those include prescription drug overdoses, medical errors, and motor vehicle accidents. And I would think, and I haven't looked at the updated Canadian results, but I think you guys are pretty close there. Prescription drug overdoses and motor vehicle accidents sit, I believe, still at #3 in Canada as well. And then I believe it's either 4 or 5, you'd see diabetes-related diseases, whether that's kidney diseases or diseases of the liver. Liver cirrhosis and fatty liver is a huge concern. That's an obesity-related disease. Heart disease is obesity-related, and by and large. And type 2 diabetes is of course comorbid with obesity. And thoughts, movement, and food clean all of those up. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but I'm saying if you align these things with health and abundance, and you start taking the daily actions toward that, that a lot of these things just go away as a side effect of changing those actions, which I'll talk about in a second. So get your movement in. You don't have to exercise. All the gyms are closed. What are you doing? It's hard for us to go to the gym now. So my question is, what are you doing? Are you doing anything at home? Do you have some home gym workout equipment, even just maybe a jump rope or a pull-up bar, or maybe some of those rubber band things that you can put some strain on your muscles? Are you doing push-ups? Have you utilized this thing as a tool instead of as a distraction? Because this thing, if I just go to YouTube and I type in body weight exercise, I can get hundreds of results. Find some of those things and then do those actions daily and mix it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot, or don't, or just get 10,000 steps in so you're not gaining a bunch of weight while you're quarantined and you're not moving as much. And you guys, I'm going to tell you right now, it's hard. Animals have a tendency to stay put when they're well fed, and you're an animal. It's hard, but you have to do it anyway. Life sometimes sucks, and this is one of those moments that sometimes sucks. So just get over it and push through that hard stuff. And then the reward is a healthier, longer living body with less disease. That's the reward we get for doing things that are sometimes difficult. If we always take the easy path, life might be easy, but it's also going to be short. I promise you that. I watched my dad do that. I watched my mom do that. My father died at 56, suffocated to death in the hospital while I watched. My dad died of lung cancer. He smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and was a heavy, heavy drinker. An alcoholic who smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day is not going to live very long. But my dad took the easy way, never wanted to work on the hard stuff, always took the easy route. I can't say that I blame him, but it shortened his life dramatically. My mother, same way, never exercised or ate right a day in her life. Last year, my mother died. She was 74. She died of 5 diseases at the same time. My mother died of cancer. She was dying of lymphoma, but she was also dying of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and Alzheimer's. Every one of those diseases, the rheumatoid arthritis had broken both of her ankles, crippled her so she couldn't walk. The last 5 years of her life, she couldn't walk. That's not how I'm going out. That's not how I want you guys to go out. The reason I do these webinars, and I've been doing a lot of these, is because I want you to realize how much power you have in your own health. And it starts with the thoughts, and then it continues to the movement. Did you move enough to be able to eat today? That's the big question. If you didn't, I would caution you to watch what kind of foods you put in your mouth, because you didn't even move enough to go get those foods. It's been a rule for millions of years. And when we violate one of Mother Nature's rules, we pay the price. We might not pay it today, but we will pay it. And we'll pay it with interest. And I watched both of my parents pay that price way too early. We're all going to die, every one of us. But we don't have to die at 74 while cancer is pushing our lungs to the point where we can't take a breath. And we don't have to die of cigarette smoking and alcoholism. We can die of old age. We are capable as a human species of dying in our 90s and 100s, just falling asleep one day and not waking up. We are capable of that. There are people around the world doing that right now. And if they can do it, so can you. And when people say, well, that's genetic because they all live in the same area. No, it's not. Geneticists are telling us it's only 7% genetic. So the rest of it is environment. And one of those environments is the food that you eat. When we look at immune boosting foods, it turns out French fries and pizza are not on that list, nor is ice cream, nor are Ritz crackers, nor is licorice, nor are gummy bears. Those are not immune boosting foods. And yet, what are we eating right now? How many of you are still going to the grocery store buying the same old food-like products that turn out to be garbage, yet they taste delicious and that's the only thing your kids will eat? We still do that. We're doing that more now than ever because of the stress we're under, because of the fear we're under. And I'm going to counsel you to act accordingly and change the food that you eat today. The next time you go to the grocery store, there's a simple rule here. There's no magic, by the way. It's not keto diets, vegan diets, carnivore diets. There's no magic. The magic is are you eating food or are you eating food-like products that were designed to get you to overconsume them? So food, by definition, would be a plant or an animal that consists of a single ingredient when you purchase it. So that's easy, right? If it's a single ingredient, plant or animal, then I have food. So we can categorize these: fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, and then anything made of or coming from an animal, like the eggs and chicken and poultry and beef, any of those substances. If it's a plant or an animal, if it has one ingredient, that's food. That's where your raw materials are. That's where the information is to your genetic code to express healthy genes rather than unhealthy ones. If I go to the majority of the food supply in both of our countries right now, that's only about 30% of what we eat. The other 70% are grains and sugars and deep fried foods and corn syrup, corn starch, sodas. The vast majority of calories that are coming into our bodies are not from food. They're from food-like substances that we're buying and we believe that they're food. And I'll make it easy, you guys. Go to the store. If it's a single ingredient food, you can put it in your cart. Go home and make anything you want with that food. Doesn't matter what you make. You can make chili with single ingredient foods. You can have steak and lobster if that's your thing. You can eat eggs and bacon for breakfast. You can have a piece of lean meat with some vegetables. You can go to the crock pot. There's some crock pot cookbooks out there, you guys, that let your slow cooker do the cooking for you while you go about your day. And then 6 to 8 hours later, a machine made your food for you. There's some recipe books out there. If you guys want some recipe books on this, because a lot of people are, what do I cook at home? Because we're not used to being home this often. The folks at Whole30 make some amazing cookbooks. And one of them is a slow cooker recipe book. One of them is a 20-minute or less meals book. Their cookbooks are fantastic. And they're all single ingredient foods that kind of fit what foods are, using spices instead of sugar to make things taste palatable. So Whole30, and that's WHOLE, and then the number 30. So if you just go to Amazon.
Online? And those are online?
Yeah, go to Amazon and type in Whole30 cookbooks, and you'll find all three of them. They're my favorite cookbooks by far.
Awesome,
So,
thanks.
yeah, and Amazon's a pretty good place. They're still delivering in about a week, so it's coming pretty fast. So here's the short version of this. If you want to see what you're supposed to do for optimum health, go outside. Watch your behavior when you're in nature. Don't bring food with you, by the way. Just go outside and watch your behavior. That's how you should still be behaving, because that's the programming that you're still stuck with. And a lot of people will say, well, we have these buildings. We don't live outside anymore, Dan. We've evolved past that. No, we haven't. We are adaptable, but we don't adapt that quickly from a DNA perspective. So if we look at human genetics and we look at DNA adaptation, it takes a full 20,000 to a million years for human DNA to completely adapt to an environmental change. 20,000 is the bottom of that scale, a million is the top. We have not had most of the foods that we eat for 20,000 years. We haven't had the cars that we drive for 20,000 years. We haven't been indoors constantly for 20,000 years. So your genetic code isn't ready. And when you lock an animal in a cage and feed it sugar all day, you are going to see exactly the diseases you're seeing now. And you can mark my words on this. There's very few people that are willing to say this publicly, but I am. You will see more suicides and more depression from this virus and this quarantine than you will deaths from the virus. Just watch. Because you can't take animals and lock them in cages away from their tribal support and feed them constant sugar and not expect those things to happen. Self-harm, depression, anxiety, and suicide are an ultimate problem that we will be facing in the next month and a half. And nobody's talking about that. We know it's the worst thing we can do to prisoners, but we don't even consider it when we do it to ourselves. We self-isolate for 2 months and people aren't even leaving their homes because they're scared. Stop letting fear get a hold of you. I'm not saying violate the rules. I'm saying stop letting fear get a hold of you. You're fine. If you're listening to me, you're great. You did well for yourself already because you're listening to this message. Congratulations. What are you scared of? Get some outside time, get some movement, start replacing the foods that you find comfort in, those comfort foods like ice cream and mozzarella cheese sticks and all the deep fried nonsense and the pizza. Start replacing those with better information, better raw materials, and you will find yourself feeling and looking differently. Start moving like you deserve to move instead of just staying in one spot. And help
Dan,
happens. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, when I was at the university, I had the privilege of working with Dr. Paul Cubes, and he's one of the leading researchers on gut biome. And one of the
Yes.
things that we were identifying was what you eat does affect what you think. Your
Yes,
thoughts on
it does. Because the gut biome changes your thought patterns as well. So we tend to try to simplify things in our own brains to make them linear. And you guys, you're not a linear system. You're a tangled web of nonsense. And if I pull one string, the whole thing starts to unravel. So when we look at the interconnectedness of the gut biome and your thought process, there's 3 times as much information going up your vagus nerve to your brain than sending down from your brain to your gut. There's 3 times more stuff going up. So you're driven by those things in your gut. They control 90% of your immune response. And the foods that you eat change the way that bacteria population represents itself. If you're eating too much sugary nonsense foods, you get an overgrowth of the wrong kind of bacteria. If you start eating better foods with more fiber and less sugar, you start getting a different type of bacteria that's actually healthier for you. The food matters on so many levels. We could talk for days about how food affects your human body. I'm asking you to do 3 easy things. Change your thoughts. Change your movement to one of, do I get to eat today because I moved enough? And then change your food to actual food instead of food-like products. Just those 3 changes. That's it. Movement, thoughts, and food. That's it. That's all we have to change. Those inputs, and this is, I like to tell people to teach their kids some stuff during this quarantine, is fix the input and the output fixes itself. And I want you to understand this. If I put good input in, the side effects of doing that, because I put good input in, the side effects are weight loss, less disease, healthier immune system, better mood, more productivity, better relationships. Those are side effects of putting good input in. I don't have to measure what's coming out because I'm measuring what's going in, and it's awesome. And that changes the output. That's how that works. Anyone in manufacturing will tell you, if I'm going to manufacture something, I have to have the right raw materials to do it. I can't manufacture steel beams with wood chips. It doesn't work that way. I need steel for that. I can't have wood to make steel beams. Just like you can't have a human body and expect a good human body when you're only putting in French fries and pizza. It doesn't work that way. Something breaks along the way, and we humans have a tendency to blame the disease instead of looking in the mirror and going, could this be my fault? Did I do things for the last 20 years that may have hurt me? And I've got good news. It's not too late to change it. If you're like, I'm too far gone, I'm not even going to bother. No, you're not too far gone. You get a brand new body every 6 years. Every 6 years, every cell in your body replicates and changes, and it's brand new, except for some of your brain cells and some of the cells in your eyeball. Other than that, every cell, your skin cells renew every 30 days, you get new blood every 90 days, you get a brand new liver every 18 months, completely new liver, like it was brand new, like you just bought it off the showroom floor every 18 months. Every 6 years, you get new bones. Every 4 years, you get new lungs. This is a self-healing, self-replacing, self-cleaning machine if it has the right input. Clean up your thoughts. You're healthy, you're happy, you're amazing. Life is awesome today because you woke up. Eat the right foods that match the DNA response that you want and that are raw materials for you to build a new human, and then move like you deserve to get that food. That's it. It's that easy. I'll just do a couple ones before we do Q&A to boost immune system. One of the things that very few people are talking about right now is that almost no one is commuting. Okay, the average American commutes 45 minutes one way to work. That's an hour and a half a day. Yet still to this day, the vast majority of people are not getting 8 hours of sleep. And if we look at immune boosters, if we look at what does your body need to make sure it has a good immune response? Well, what did you do the last time you had the flu? The last time you had the flu, you probably slept for hours or days. So go to bed. Going to bed and getting 8 hours of sleep is still the #1 completely free way to boost your immune system, and people still aren't doing it. They gained an hour and a half of their life back per day on average, and they're still not getting 8 hours of sleep, and I have no idea why. I've got a client right now that I'm working with that's getting 9 hours a day because he doesn't commute and he doesn't fly anywhere. This is a very high power CFO for a very large multi-billion-dollar company, and he is getting 9 hours of sleep, and he loves that. That's huge for me to see because that's a free immune booster. Sunlight creates vitamin D. When your skin gets exposed to UVB radiation, you get vitamin D. Vitamin D is a precursor to serotonin, which makes you happy. When your serotonin, when the sun goes away and it gets dark and cold, your body converts serotonin to melatonin and you get tired. So the more sun you can get on your skin within reason, you shouldn't be burning out there. Guys, I don't even use sunscreen. So I go out enough to get enough sun where I don't need sunscreen. If I'm out longer, I just do this because I don't want cream on my skin, that products I can't pronounce being absorbed into my flesh. I just don't like that. So I wear hats and long sleeve shirts if I'm going to be out for hours. But part of the time I'll just roll my sleeves up or take my shirt off because I live in the desert in Las Vegas, not where it's snowing. I can do that right now. But I'll just roll these up and get some sun on my skin. Vitamin D has also been shown to be a very powerful immune booster. So it assists the immune system in doing its own job. It's what we would call immune nutrition. So sleep and sunlight cost no money. And there are two ways to completely and utterly ramp up your immune response so that if you find this virus somewhere out there, you don't get hurt from it. Because a healthy immune system knows exactly what to do in the face of viruses. I would just ask you to consider those things. Please change your thoughts. Change your thoughts and align those with health and abundance and happiness. And maybe ask yourself, how can I serve my community? Put good food in your body, move, go to bed, and get outside. The last thing I'll end with in the next 2 minutes here is please surround yourself with a bunch of people that are aligned with what you are trying to do here. The tribal relationships that we've largely cut off by quarantining a population of people, that's the main reason we're going to be looking at suicide and anxiety and depression disorders going through the roof in the next couple months, is because we are social creatures. We need those tribal relationships. So please utilize this thing and get FaceTime and use meetings like this where you can see people's faces, and try, if you can, to get together with friends and family that aren't infected so you're not spreading this virus. If you can, meet in those tiny little groups and get some human contact and some tribal relationships back in there, because we're tribal. And if your tribe is going with you in the same direction, you will be more successful. And if your tribe is sitting on the couch watching TV, eating beer and pizza, and that's all they're doing, that's going to be you very, very shortly, because we're so scared of not being part of the tribe, we tend to do what the tribe does. So please find some humans that are aligned with what you're trying to do, and all of you together can hold one another accountable. And I've got groups doing this that are spread out. So I'm going to show you one thing here on my phone. This is kind of funny. I talk about these guys all the time, but this is a family. You can see that top right there. It's a family. This is a group text message, and I hate group text messages, but this is a group that's working together as a family to hold each other accountable to daily goals. So here's what we're doing. They're right there. They're saying, hey, we're going to go back to the classic. We're going to do 200 abs, 100 push-ups, and 100 squats. That's their challenge today. And then all of them are going to check in. Oh, they're adding 50 burpees in there. This is a family that's doing this together, and they're all in different areas of the same city. And they also report in on their food. Did you eat single ingredient foods? How many steps did you get? How much sleep did you get? And here we've got somebody that still only got 7 hours of sleep. Guys, these group text messages are how a group of people are holding each other accountable to food, to movement, to their sleeping patterns, and to what kind of exercise they're doing. This is a great way to do it. I've got, by the way, this is from a software company in Chicago. This is one of the families that works at the software company. I've got 3 other groups just like that, and they all check in. There's another group. They all check in with each other every single day. I get 50, 60, 80 text messages from these groups of them checking in. How you doing? Why haven't you reported your stuff yet today? They're holding each other accountable. Please find somebody during this quarantine to hold you accountable to these inputs being better, so that you can come out of this as a renewed person, like a little butterfly flying out of this thing instead of like a sloth coming out of it trying to lose 15 pounds. I know, Ruth Ann, you wanted me to pause it about 45 minutes in to do some Q&A. What did I miss? Are there some questions out there?
There sure are. And I think you may have addressed this, but our union was asking, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is ourself. How do we keep ourselves motivated? And I think you just talked about that. When we don't see success,
Yeah.
when we're feeling, we don't see change.
So a lot of people will hire me as that person. So I tell people I'm a great accountability coach because I'm not cheap. So you hire me, I'll do it for you. But you don't need me. Absolutely not. You need another part of a tribe. Who is going to hold you accountable, and what are the consequences? So a lot of groups will say, hey, there's consequences if you don't check in every day. Even the act of having to check in makes us do better because other people will see those results. So I would say the way you need to be successful is first change your thoughts. That's gotta happen first. Make a determination of I will do this, not I'm gonna try or I can't or I will do this. And these are the 4 people or the 5 people that are gonna hold me accountable to doing that. And then serve those people. I look at my fitness and my health as how I serve my community. Because if I am sick, I can do nothing. I can't give my gifts away. I can't serve others. This body is how I serve other people. My brain is how I serve other people. If those aren't healthy, how do I serve? So change that mindset and then find some folks to hold you accountable to that.
I really like what you just said there, Dan, about many times it is important. We get so caught up in being so self-centered and so I focused. But a lot of research has shown that when we do something for somebody else, it has significantly more impact on us.
Right.
And
the happiness factor goes up, and it's stickier. Right. I'll do it more often because I watched what the reaction I got from other people. I'm going to do that way more often than just doing it for myself.
right, that sort of loops into that intentional aspect of discipline. And people don't like the word discipline, but
Yeah. Well, I like it. I like the word is, hey, look, the daily inputs have to go in daily, folks. You can't just change the daily inputs once and expect magic. You have to change those inputs every day. And I look at this, it's not really discipline if it's a habit. So change that habit. It's going to suck while you're going in there, but once it's a habit, it's not that much discipline. The effort I put into my life is the same effort you put into yours. My output is just different because I've changed the way those inputs look.
and focusing on the rewards, not just on the pain or the difficulty as you're going into it, but take that pause after you've maybe done that walk, that and just say, how do I feel right now? What am I thinking right now? Yeah.
Yeah, you
That's
guys
good.
know this, please. The pain is mandatory. If you want growth, there will be pain. I promise. This is a lesson you can teach your children. Growth always hurts. You want bigger muscles? They're going to hurt. When their bones are growing and they're getting into bigger people, those hurt. You want to grow your brain, your relationship, your spirituality. There's always pain on the edges. The suffering is the optional part. The pain is going to happen. It's the suffering that's optional. Embrace that pain. Wow, I'm out of breath because I never walked that far before. Good. Good. Embrace that. And you're lucky enough to even be able to do it because you have legs. Congratulations. There's some people that can't. So embrace the pain, but don't do the suffering part. That suffering is completely optional. You don't have to have that.
It's great. Yeah, and you've talked about reframing what it is that you're talking to yourself about, going back to that book that you talked about. Marianne has asked a question, and I think it really talks about what we were just discussing, and that was about consciously, when leaders are being conscious, what about their unconscious? How do you tune into your unconscious thoughts?
Yeah, well, the big thing there is just stop for just a second and close your eyes. Because when we're not, the most way we interact with our environment is through visual. So if I can shut your eyes off, I stop most of your reaction to the environment. If I can also put some noise canceling headphones on you, I stop the auditory response. So now you're only left with touching and tasting and smelling. Those aren't very powerful when you're seated by yourself in a room. What that allows you to do is hear the thoughts, because we're so busy doing other stuff that we never stop and think, what is that thing inside they're saying? Whoever that is that's driving this meat suit that I'm wearing around, what are they saying? And when you stop and close your eyes, some people call this meditation. I'm good if you call it meditation. Some people will call it prayer. I'm good if you call it prayer too. What I'm not good with is if you don't stop on occasion. We're so busy being busy that we never take time and do nothing. So do this today, and then you'll get in touch with those unconscious thoughts. Stop. Set a timer on your phone for 10 minutes. Don't open your eyes until 10 minutes is up. Keep your eyes closed and just sit with you. This is you being quite selfish, and it might be very, very boring. And for some of you, that 10 minutes is going to last 3.5 years because you're so bored in there. Good. Because this is how we stop and hear the unconscious. Listen to
Those
that.
inner drive. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
About just being still. Here's a question from Darren, and it's quite an interesting one that I think he's just looking for your comment on heat shock protein therapy. I
Yeah.
don't
So
even know what that is.
yeah, anytime you get your body temperature up a couple of degrees, you activate what's called heat shock proteins. And your healthy cells have these heat shock proteins, and what that's doing is trying to mitigate an inflammatory response from external or internal heat. So if I can get your body temperature up to fever-like temperatures, get it up to about 101, 101.5 Fahrenheit, I get you up about 2 degrees warmer than you are now, these heat shock proteins turn on. And when you leave them on for about a half an hour every day, you get radically reduced inflammation. You kill off the weak cells that might have been living in your body, because weak cells can't withstand that fever. But also because you're self-inducing a fever, you kill off viruses and bacteria that shouldn't be there. So if you look at a viral infection, if you look at a virus like the flu virus, when you get the flu, you get a fever. Most people will reach for a fever-reducing pharmaceutical to make that fever go away so they can go back to work. And that's the worst thing you could possibly do. That fever is there for a reason. It's your body's trying to kill something that doesn't belong. So what I do on a daily basis is I go into a fever and I make it myself through a sauna. So I have an infrared sauna in my spare bedroom just right over there. I was in there this morning for 40 minutes. It was brutally hot. It was 81 degrees Celsius in my infrared sauna. It's crazy hot. So what happens is the weak stuff dies, the heat shock proteins turn on to reduce inflammation the rest of the day, but I also kill off any virus, because when my whole body is that hot, the whole thing is 101, 101.5 degrees, Nothing's living in there that shouldn't be living. My strong cells even have a problem. So putting your body under short bursts of physical duress from heat turns on an anti-inflammatory network that also turns out to be really good for the immune system. So I would encourage you, if you can afford it, you should have a sauna in your house or a hot tub or a steam room. If you can't afford it, then find a way to get hot and sweaty every day without having one of those devices in your house. And exercise is a good way to do that.
That's fantastic. You know that you're speaking to Canadians here. We barbecue all year round, Dan.
Yes,
So if your hot tub is on your deck,
yes,
jump in your hot tub, roll in the snow if you can, get
yeah,
cold again, and eat that one source food.
yeah. Single ingredient foods. Hey, you guys, that whole hot cold thing is very powerful. It's a very powerful immune booster because you're using heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins at the same time. So it's kind of fun to trick your body like that. Here's the rule. If you always test this thing and you always push this thing in short bursts, manageable, into extreme chaos, it turns out that only the strong survive. And when you do that for years, then only the strong survive and the weak stuff dies. That means a healthier, stronger organism as you age.
So we've got a few minutes left. I got one more question, and then I'm going to ask you to do a summary again of the 5 suggestions that you've got. The one question that came in was about benefits to fasting. And
Yeah.
what are some of the things that fasting triggers?
Well, so this is the same as pushing your body into some chaos. And this is also the same as what happens when you get the flu. Because what happens when you get the flu? Not only do you sleep all day, but you don't eat for days on end. Your body is like, no food for you. I'll throw up if you put it in there. So you don't eat and you sleep all day. Well, that should give us a clue to what the immune system might be looking for. Is the body saying, I can't process anything right now. I got stuff to take care of. And we don't want to overactivate the immune system or any other system by putting food in there and forcing it to digest. Your body's got to use all that extra energy to get rid of this thing that could kill you if you don't get rid of it. So when we look at cellular autophagy, this is the cleanup and repair of cells in your body that are weak or senescent, or cells that should have died a couple of days ago or 3 days ago. So you have some cells in your body. You're always going to carry around some senescent cells. But one of the ways to kill those off or to increase what they call cellular autophagy is to sauna. That kills off weak cells. That kills off the cells that might be hurting you. One of the other ways to kill those things off is to not eat. So when I don't eat food, my body is forced to make new cells from whatever it has available to it, and I'm not putting food in, so there's no food available to make new human. So what it's going to do is go in and start cleaning up. It's going to look for weak cells, cells that don't belong there, and it's going to start cleaning those up and seeing if any of those can be used for spare parts. You're going to make today, while you're sitting around doing nothing, your body will create 75 billion cells. It's going to make those 75 billion cells whether you eat or not. If you keep putting food in, it's going to make those cells primarily out of the food that you eat. If you stop eating, it makes those new cells out of whatever is available. So this is, again, where your body goes in and cleans out the weak. It cleans out the stuff that shouldn't be there at all because it's weak, it's not doing anything. Senescent cells are cells that are still alive that aren't functioning. And all they're doing is making everything else around them irritated by secreting inflammatory cytokines. So if we can, A, shorten our feeding window so that we leave some time on the outside of that window when we're not eating, or B, just fast completely for a day or 3, you give your immune system a huge boost. So fasting is another way to boost the immune system that literally doesn't cost you any money.
We've got about 3 minutes left. I wanted just to tell everybody that this is being recorded. So Dan, can you just kind of do a quick 1-minute summary for us? What are some of the key takeaways here?
Yeah, here's your key takeaways. Change your thoughts to ones of health and abundance and happiness. Change your movement to the movement of a healthy, happy, abundant person. Eat the foods that give you good raw materials and good information to your DNA, go to bed, surround yourself with people that are aligned with those things. So it's not that tough. If you can sauna daily if you can. If you can fast. If you can do that for 2 or 3 days, you get a huge boost in your immune response. Get outside and spend some time out there in that beautiful sun. It's so simple. If you just go camping, it all makes sense.
That sounds great. Thank you again, Dan, for taking the time to be with us today. I really appreciate it, and I think everyone online has appreciated your wisdom and the clarity. Again, you made it very, very simple. You broke it down. There's no super magic skills here. This is all stuff that we can do, and we can do in small doses until we get the discipline.
Yes.
I know that some of my team is on the treadmill as they watch these webinars, so I think that's a great thing as well. All right, I just want to remind everybody the recording is available on our website under COVID-19 Insights. That will be available shortly. And tomorrow we have another great speaker, that's Adrian Davis. So if you're able to log in tomorrow, we would certainly welcome you. So Dan, go and enjoy that desert for us. And we in Canada are a little jealous.
I
Have a
appreciate
great
you
day.
guys. I appreciate you. Thank you.